Take us back to when subsidy was. I will take you back musically, back to where subsidy was or who was the past government and who were now. But the fine tune and songs that will be played, it will take you down memory lane and hopefully forget about your worries and problems for 2 seconds. That's all. How long I can guarantee. I'm not a miracle worker. All right, people. My name is Kimberly Wachku. Call me Kim, the Oracle, the Digital Oracle, OTF, the Fellow, Chanya One, Madam Speaker. And I will say yes to them all. And this is me reporting for... Okay, why are we not live? All right. So I've been told that we're not live on YouTube and Facebook. However, we'll do a playback later on YouTube and Facebook because of a little network problem. I've got my guest with me in the studio. I've got Mr. Fortune Agula in the studio, and you know him very well as the mayor.
Absolutely.
And one time a previous host of Abuja Today and many
what's
other
happening
shows.
in Abuja, by the way?
What's happening in Abuja? Really? He's going to be our analyst for the afternoon as we wait through some of the stories together. The Mayor, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back.
Delighted to have you in the studio. You know, I was coming upstairs and I heard his voice and they were already talking Nigeria. So like, don't exhaust this man because he's still going to come into the studio and talk about these issues.
Absolutely.
Oh, boy. All right, so there's so much going on, but just to let you know, King Charles hosts Tinubu at Buckingham Palace, and apparently King Charles has been hosting quite a number of people. I saw earlier in the day the rugby team from New Zealand.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it was trending because it felt like it was not the royal protocol to hug and show so much emotion.
You can't even just touch him.
One was even tapping him on the shoulder.
Like, are you real? You're
For
like,
real?
This is the king. You know,
and they wanted a hug, and he willingly, with a broad smile.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? That was so gracious. And it was beautiful to see. Sometimes people who are in the eye of the public and all of that have to be correct all the time and all of that. But they are people. They are still people.
Particularly when there's so many more protocol to go through with the royal family.
Or
you can't dress like this, you can't leave your hair like this. Meghan got into trouble because of, how she was...
Naturally, she would get into trouble, with her background and all of that. But I can imagine being King Charles. It's not easy being him. He was born into royalty. He's been under the wing of his mom for a long time, into his 70s before becoming king. Let's cut him some slack.
Recently, the whole case with the cancer and the lights on his health.
Dealing with all of that. He deserves a break to be a person.
He really deserves a break, and it felt like he thoroughly enjoyed the hug that he was giving. And the fact that a hug generated a global trend is enough to tell you how much of a big deal.
Important he is.
And I give hugs every day. It's not made headlines.
But it hasn't brought that much. I can imagine.
All right, so our president is being hosted by the King of England, and it will be interesting to see what they're talking about and what benefits this visit will bring for Nigeria. The president just recently came back from China after a China-African summit, and now in London. Seems to be moving quite a lot. The presidential jet is active, I see. But
quite a lot.
We'd get to see what benefits.
I think they probably foresaw the itinerary that was coming, and there was a need for a new jet. It was one of the reasons why probably couldn't have been put forward to another time, because the president is really doing a lot of movements. However, I just hope that while he's doing all of these movements, that he's keeping abreast with the facts back home, because it's a very sensitive time, and the way the people perceive their leader, in a time when they are in distress, really matters to how they relate to him. So I hope that is at the back of his mind.
All right, really, that is very important because there's so much going on at home at the moment, and you expect the president to just pay attention to. But I want to believe he gets the briefing. Mr. President, this is the latest update. Mr. President, this was I'm off to London. I need to go see the king and all of that. I'll deal with that when I get back. It must really be a busy life being the president of a country.
It is. And this is why there's always an emphasis on the state of health of the president and all of that, because you have to carry on a very busy schedule. However, we also had a president just before President Bola Tinubu. We had President Buhari, who also did a lot of traveling. And eventually we found out that he wasn't really being carried along with things that were happening. He gave direct instructions to appointees, to heads of security agencies, and they would do what they wanted to do, and he didn't even know. So it's possible for you to be out of touch and just get a paper briefing, but you don't really know what's going on.
Indeed. Let's hope that beyond the paper briefing, it takes a minute to really assess and evaluate the situation back home in Nigeria. Talking about assessing, I know the vice president was in Borno State, Maiduguri, where it reported that over 30 people have died and 400 people displaced, 1 million people affected by the flood situation in the state, and the contributory factor is the Alu Dam, also that overran its boundaries. So looking at some of the videos coming in, how submerged the houses were, vehicles, people swimming in dirty water and all of that, and having to be camped in IDP camps and relocated, it must really throw people off balance. I can just imagine.
It is a terrible situation, but it is more terrible to think that this is not the first time. It's more terrible to know that we have been in this particular situation exactly 30 years ago. On the 13th of September 1994, the same thing happened. And I
didn't know it was 13th of September.
It was 13th of September. I had to go back to look for the report. Wow. It was 13th of September. This one happened on the 10th. So it means that exactly 30 years later, what we experienced some time ago, we are going through again, meaning we didn't learn from that situation. That time, the report of 1994, the federal government sent a 1 million naira relief fund to Borno State government at that time. The Borno State government itself, carried out some palliatives, tried to do the same thing we're doing. Right now, the federal government is sending another 3 billion to Borno State, and then the state government is doing what it can and all of that. But it's the same thing. The problem still exists. We've thrown money at the symptoms, but we've not said anything about the causes.
But what can we really say about the cause? People tell you can't predict mother nature and how things will pan out. For example, if the rain is intense, which is a global problem, thanks to global warming, from China to Australia to London, you get every now and again reports of flooding going on. I think I get where you're coming from if you're looking at the dam perspective.
Exactly.
As in the
dam is not mother nature. The dam, we built the dam. We are the ones managing the dam. So Mother Nature comes on schedule every year. Comes on schedule every season. We know when Mother Nature is coming. We also know the strength of the infrastructure that we have. This dam was built in 1986. Between then and 1994, it was compromised. Between 1994 and 2024, we don't know that it can be compromised again. We didn't get the memo. We don't understand oh, come on. I mean, I think that our biggest response to problems is usually throw money at it. But that's not always the answer. We need to assess the situation. We need to understand what that situation is and then see how we can mitigate. Sometimes throwing money at it before it becomes a problem is actually better. Because right now, you're throwing 3 billion at the Borno State government. Good. How does it get to the people? People have been displaced. Their families still looking for members. We're talking about 400,000 people. Have you seen 400 people in one place before? Then think of 4,000 people, and then escalate it to 400,000 people. And this is the.
We're looking at just a rough estimate.
These are rough estimates. So imagine the kind of crisis we're talking about. And then Borno State, Maiduguri particularly, has been under intense pressure for the last 10 years, from insurgency, from banditry, from all these things. They're just being resettled. The government has been doing a lot. The Borno State government doing a lot to resettle people and all of that. And then you bring this kind of humanitarian disaster. It's a long journey for Borno State, and our heart goes out to them.
Indeed, our heart goes out to them, and I know a lot of groups, civil society organizations and the likes have put up appeals to Nigerians to see how they can support the effort towards resettling people and, taking care of the situation in that region. We'll continue to bring you up to speed with development there, even though we hear that the water is receding. It's one thing for the water to recede and then people see that their goods, their businesses, their shops, their homes completely destroyed. A lot of things washed away.
True.
And you have to, how did you start all over again?
True.
So our hearts are with them as they grapple that. Meanwhile, Borno State is not the only state that is dealing with flooding this year. From Yobe to quite a number of states, we see farming community washed away with massive flooding and intense rainfall. And, I wanted to say Mother Nature again, but there need to be plan. And that's why even it's a global conversation about global warming, about how we interact.
Water levels are higher. We're talking about heat waves everywhere, different countries and all of that. It's a global problem. And if we're going to have solutions to these problems, we must be on top of it. We must be proactive. We must be on top of our game. We must be ahead of the plan. Or else we'll keep responding. Yeah. And every time we respond, there is the tendency that we lose more. So it's better to plan than to be responding to, because you never know the scale. This time last year we're talking about 2,000, 3,000 people lost. This year already we're talking 380 something people before the Borno one happened. So by the time you put all that together, and then we still have the forecast saying that there might still be flooding till November, highlighting all these states that you have spoken about, it means that people that could have been saved were waiting for them to die.
Sadly. Tuale to the mayor himself. So good to hear your voice. Fortune smiles on you, sir. Good afternoon, Dikbo from Kado. And let's see here. Good afternoon, Kim and to Fortune. Tinubu is traveling. Meanwhile, petrol is selling for 1,000 naira plus. He's indifferent. Tinubu is traveling up and down. Meanwhile, insecurity is on the rise. I think he's indifferent. He's traveling. Meanwhile, economy is falling. He still thinks he's indifferent. All of those who voted, would leave that part out. Colin from Buhari, thank you very much for that. Now let's look at security. Some of the areas you pointed out that the president is traveling and you feel like, this is going on. Starting with Bello Turji, one of the most infamous bandit and kidnapper in Nigeria, northwest Nigeria precisely, operating the Zamfara Katsina axis, are said to impose a fine of 50 million naira on Burki community, a farming community. The initial report was it was 30 million, and he had to correct it by doing his one-on-one press briefing. Like you're giving one side of the story. First off, it's not 30 million, it is 50 million.
50 million. And
secondly, you didn't mention what caused it. They killed our cattle in that region, and so they have to pay for it. The community, they told on us, the military came and they did this, and so they'll have to pay the fine or they're not going to farm. We know that particular region, it's obviously an ethnic undertone to the kind of insurgency that is going on there, the Fulani / the Hausa, because they had so much to say about the Hausa community and how they work in cahoots with the military to kill their cattle. I know that the military have been deployed to the region.
Yes.
The military has also been very talking tough and saying that his days are numbered and he'll be found. They've been saying that for a very long time. I give them benefit of doubt that they're just waiting for the right timing, but I can count the number of times they've actually said days are numbered and put up picture and said anybody that knows where these people are should identify them, and it's running on 2 years now. So this is a man who thinks he is above the law and untouchable, and putting out his own info to saying that is incorrect. I find them more and daring the military at this point in time. And then this morning there was a report of also attack on the highway, on Zamfara State, Funtua axis, where quite a number of people who've not established the number of people that were removed from there. This is a reminder that we still have security challenge on our hands.
And this is coming on the heels of a security briefing just yesterday, by the hierarchy of the Nigerian military and all of that. First of all, we have to give credit to them. Not a very easy terrain to be in. And of course, they've been overstretched with a mass resignation of soldiers and all of that.
Yeah.
It's not been an easy time for them. However, like you said, they've been talking really tough and giving assurances of the fact that, this banditry and insurgency is under control. So to have, I don't want to say that I'm sure, but, the kidnappings of today look very much like a response to that briefing which the military had, where you have said, okay, so you have us under control, you have this, you have that, yet we can stop any highway and pick whoever we want.
We'll take more thought on that after this quick break.
School? Yes, mommy, I have everything
Hello, my name is Kimberly. I'm the host of Hard Facts, and I bring you the biggest stories driving conversation every weekday here on 95.1 Nigeria Info Hard Fact Show. I love to get your opinion and conjectures, but the facts you cannot dispute here on Hard Facts. Join me and let's talk.
Threats coming from some quarter looking at Bello Turji, who is a wanted man by the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Price is on his head as we speak, and yet he was comfortable enough to put out, his own bit of communique saying, I find them because they killed my cattle, and making all kinds of threats. I know a lot of people, even in that community, can't wait for the end of him, as it were. But yeah, you were saying something about perhaps a response to the press briefing.
Yes,
by the military.
So I mean, it looks very much like a response. The kidnap that was done today on that very, very active highway. Even though if you look at the pictures and all of that, the highway is a shadow of itself. There's a big part of that highway that's can aid these kinds of things. So to a great extent, our infrastructure is also aiding the insecurity because, where you have very, very long patches of bad road and all that, then people can slow down. And then so people, before the military can get to places with, to respond to situations is difficult and all that. But it looked very much like a response to, that press briefing from the military of yesterday. However, Bello Turji, who we're talking about how wanted he is, talking about, we have a name, we have an identity, there are videos, he's speaking and all of that. Doesn't seem as wanted to me as the labor leader in this same country. We have a wanted terrorist. It's just like give us Barabbas and take, because the labor leader talking about Joe Ajaero now, for instance, cannot travel anywhere in the world he wants. He doesn't have his passport. He was going for a well-publicized event, yet, he could be stopped. Why don't we have an answer for people like Turji? Why don't we have an answer for some of those? Have you seen the wanted list of the military? the ones they paste in public places and all of that, all of those faces, a good number of them still walking free, still doing what they do. We're still talking about the same kinds of problems, 7 years after, 5 years after, and no real headway. When I was watching the briefing yesterday, the Chief of Army Staff speaking, Chief of Defense Staff speaking, and all of that. There were certain, even though, military will not give you all the details, there were certain statements made that put me at rest to some extent in my mind, because I felt that they were on top of the situation. Waking up to this news this morning took away every form of rest I got out of that briefing yesterday, because it was absolutely the same situation
Rinse
all
and
over
repeat.
Again.
The military talk stuff, then we see the terrorists dare them with certain action.
With certain action. So it just looks like, so what are we taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back? What's really going on? What is the strategy for us to stop this banditry, to stop this insurgency, and to prioritize it in such a way that it never, buds again?
Well, I think that's the prayer of every Nigerian. Every now and again you get a report like troops killed top ISWAP commander in Sambisa Forest, 25 terrorists neutralized, 50 terrorists neutralized.
And not to talk of the ones who surrender.
Well, they have that program of reintegration going on, one end of it. But then, when you hear the number of people removed also, and the ease and convenience at which these perpetrators, those criminals do carry out some of these attacks, it's mind-boggling nonetheless. So we just continue to hope for the best. We'll continue to demand government lives up to its responsibility of security of life and property. People in far-flung communities and the hinterland, they deserve as much safety and rest. People traveling by road.
Yeah.
I mean, I go to Kaduna often. 1 minute you're worried about abduction and kidnapping. Okay, that one is out of the road. Now you're worried about the state of the road. I mean, it would be nice to just have a worry-free moment.
I mean, and it's not just for the people in the far-flung areas. We're having reports in the FCT of estates being attacked. People, being abducted from within controlled estates where they have in-house security. So it's not. I mean, because there's a tendency for us to say, so it's far away, Kogi State, far away, Borno State, Zamfara State. So it's not close to me, and so I'm not bothered. Well, I think we should have passed that point as a nation now. We should speak up. We should, demand accountability from our security agents, demand from our government that has this primary assignment to provide security for lives and property.
Indeed. So just tuning in, it's the Roundtable. We're looking at some of the big stories driving conversation. I've got the mayor, Fortune Musa Agula, as my guest analyst in the studio. Please, is that Fortune speaking, Rico? Yes, it is Fortune. Emeka from NNPC Towers, my lovely brother in the studio. I worry about the natural disaster called flood, because a government as this would have what they would use as excuse of incoming food shortage and food security in the country. Kim, expect them to blame the upcoming surge of food price to flooding across the country. That is my worry, he said. And Chiemeka Godwin from Mabuchi says, good afternoon to our guest and you, Kim. Blessings and fortune shines on you guys. Divine preservation, he wrote. And Jess Josh from Nyanya says, good afternoon. Bello Chuji is above the law due to the bad policy rendering in our dear nation. When you're a lawyer in this country, they will see you as finished. But to the notorious, arrogant ones and illiterate, you'll be recognized in the country. We need divine intervention, he said. And Laraba, I see you. Indeed, it's a rinse and repeat. Forever, forever, one man village. Good afternoon to our August visitor, Mayor. My question is, what's the duty of the Minister of Environment and the Minister of Disaster Management? It seems they don't know what they're appointed to do. They feel their duty is to collect money and feed government to share palliative to victims of this disaster instead of being proactive before the incidents occur. How I want to say these ministers are okay. All right then.
Can I jump on that
Go
one?
ahead, sir.
Because before today, I think today was the first time I saw that the federal fire, the fire service in Borno State and other agencies have begun to put in their own response exercises.
Okay.
Yes, to help the victims of the flood. Before now, it was just the military. And somebody said in passing, well, they are doing their job. I said, no, that's not the military's job. That's why we have the state emergency management agencies. That's why we have, the Ministry of Interior. We have all of those other, even the police. They are supposed to be first responders before the military. Because we have that situation in Borno and all of that. And thankfully, the military swung into action to do what they could do because it could have been a disaster. Imagine that, security infrastructure that were set in place displaced with the flood. We're talking about animals from the zoo showing up in town. That's how chaotic that situation is. So everybody needs to be on their toes. So first day, second day, there's a lot of media attention. Military is getting accolades and all of that. All of a sudden, third day, fourth day, we start seeing fire engines showing up, and all that. Well, it was Apostle Paul that said, by all means, the gospel is being preached, right? At the end of the day, people are being helped, right? But these response mechanisms should be on, on standby. Are we saying that if there is a disaster, for instance, we have not heard about the dam from Cameroon that comes towards Benue every year. It happens every year. So they'll say, the dam was too full. That one doesn't, it's not like it breaks down or something, but they'll open it up to let water out. And then we now have flood in Benue and all of that. We've not heard that one this year. It's still coming. The time is coming. Now, last year it happened. The year before it happened. It's been happening since I was in secondary school. But we don't have a plan to respond. Maybe a few jingles here and there. The coastal areas are going to be flooded. Try and move. We are telling you people now. But that's not how to respond.
Long-term plan will be ensuring that people don't build around the alluvial plain, the coastal areas, and the like. That's
exactly what I'm saying. So we don't seem to understand the problems because we don't study them. We're not trying to learn from them. We see the problems as opportunities. Rather than, problems to solve. And as long as we continue that, it's the same thing we've been doing. Girls were taken from Dapchi. Government goes there, gives them 3 million naira. Does that bring back the girls? Does that tell us we are struggling with the number of the girls for over 2 weeks? How many girls were taken? Not from a market, from a school. We have a problem with counting. We don't know how many. So it's the same attitude we carry towards every problem. I must commend the vice president concerning this particular situation. He went there, felt the plight of the people.
He was former governor there, senator, represented the constituency.
Exactly, that's his state actually. But we've seen people who in their state stuff happened and they didn't go there, or they just do a statement from somewhere. He went there. He got in his jeans. He walked around in the water. Felt it. The people could actually see that somebody was around, from the government and all, before the response and all of that. So I won't take that from them. That was not bad. That was okay, but it has to be much more than this. We have to start putting our minds into solving problems. We can actually solve these problems. We can prepare for these problems at the worst. And then when it comes, we don't have natural disasters here. There are countries where wildfires start from just a gust of wind and a whole community is burnt down. But nobody is lost. Nobody loses. They lose their homes, but there's insurance. There's a system that works. Here, if we do a job recruitment, you remember when we did
immigration and there was a stampede.
Job recruitment was
even
worse
when they
than
were sharing palliative,
disaster.
I think was it customs or so people died.
Just share palliatives in Nigeria, people can die. Not to talk of a natural disaster. So it's really something we should look into.
Indeed. All right. Talking about let's look into what's happening in Edo State as we count down to the election. And we're meant to have a peace accord, which has been something we've done consistently from 2015, I think, where the former Nigerian leader, Abdulsalami, spearheaded that initiative to seeing how all parties can sign to the peace accord. and help to make the election violence-free. Now, less than 2 hours before the signing of the peace accord between contending political parties ahead of the September 21 governorship election, the All Progressive Congress said it was not disposed to signing the peace accord. The position is barely 12 hours after Godwin Obaseki, while receiving the chairman of the Presidential Peace Committee, former head of state, General Abdulsalam Abubakar, said his People Democratic Party may not sign the peace accord because the party have lost faith in the police and the Independent National Electoral Commission. Now, addressing a press conference at the party secretariat, Emperor Janebi said the reason for their declining to sign, among others, was that for over 2 months after a police inspector, Ono Ako, who was the orderly to the candidate of the party, Senator Monday Akpeholo, was shot and killed along Airport Road, nobody has been arrested and prosecuted, despite claims by the former Commissioner of Police, Funshaw, who told Nigerians that the command had the names of those who murdered Inspector Ako at the Benin Airport. He said, instead of them being arrested, Governor Godwin Obaseki is allegedly keeping them in the government house. So that's the dimension they're looking at it for, that the failure of the police has emboldened the state governor and his party, the PDP, to attack members of our political party at rally grounds and in their private business premises ceaselessly, and claim that the governor has made inflammatory statements that have undermined his position as a chief executive officer of the state. Now, in the wake of the worrisome and dangerous trend, Obaseki kept mute and refused to condemn the attack. After this happened, he had so much to say as to the reason why they've refused outrightly to sign the peace accord. And recall I said earlier on that the PDP, the governor of the state, did tell Abdulsalami that they might not sign the peace accord, his party, because, he said, you're very conversant with the politics of Edo State. You were here in 2020 and we had a very heated election. You know this as an off-cycle election and there's a lot of attention. Unlike 2020, I'm very worried about the development in the state today. The party met me yesterday and we may not sign the agreement. This is the first time we're witnessing that the entity supposed to maintain and enforce the party accord is now actively creating a disruptive environment. The opposition party in the state, the APC, have always argued that they may not be as popular, didn't win the last election, but they've promised to use federal power to determine the outcome of the election. So we're looking at something quite interesting here. APC is accusing the PDP and the governor of saying, they killed someone, the police is not doing anything. PDP is saying the police itself is compromised, they're not doing anything. And the both parties are saying we're not going to sign the peace accord for this reason. Now, let's not forget that the Inspector General of Police says that the Edo State Security Network, ESSN, will not participate in the state's governorship election. Apparently, they do have a state-owned security organization which is constituted to seeing that they have security within the state. And the IGP is saying, see, I don't know how you guys operate, but you're not going to be a part of this election. We've already deployed. We've already stationed. We have a number of people removed from VIPs to come in here. Because, on one hand, you would say, all right, the state security network set up by the state. Anyone could use them as a tool at this point in time. Which
is one of the reasons why people have been afraid of state police and all of that, because of such situations.
Indeed. So the police is in the middle now. Everybody is accusing.
I don't envy the police right now. It's a very difficult place to be. So, the APC has their story. The PDP governor is even talking about almost 10 of the PDP chieftains or members who are in police nets here in Abuja, spoke directly about the IGP. They made a lot of things he said. But let's not forget that the APC and the PDP are not the only they are not the only parties that
a formidable force is the Labour Party.
Exactly.
That's election
there are 16 other parties that have signed the peace accord. So the trip of General Abdulsalam Abubakar is not a total failure. However, we know that these two parties may be the favorites or the main contenders in that election, and this is why they are in the front burner of this conversation. And then it's going further, talking about this. I think it's a sad place we are, where we can't elect our leaders peacefully. where the citizens can't just, just like we're watching the debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, people making up their minds. We have undecided voters. We have those who have decided.
Yeah.
We have this, and those are the things that actually determine the outcome of an election. No, here in Nigeria, it is okay. So who is incumbent? Who has the monopoly of intimidation? Who is able to draw as much sympathy? Because right now everybody is shopping for sympathy as well. It's really sad that this is how our politics is running. If you ask me particularly, right, I do not believe that this form of democracy is working for us as a country. I don't believe that we are able to replicate the kind of democracy that we think that we have copied. Because at the end of the day, with every election cycle, it just feels like the situations are getting worse. Do you remember in this country that there were times when, even though a sitting governor was in support of a particular candidate, it wasn't common knowledge. It wasn't everywhere.
Yeah.
They're not seen on the campaign trails. They allow people go and do your campaigns, buy the hearts of the people, convince them that you are the best candidate. Right now, I can see a former governor getting involved, a sitting senator getting involved in banters, very base banters, and it's sad. Beyond that, the peace accord itself, is it really working?
That's the second part to this particular one, because it's time for us to really interrogate the impact of the peace accord. In 2015 with Jonathan, I mean, he respected it enough to say, all right, if you people don't want me, I might as well just hand up at this point in time. Yeah. So we avoided a major crisis, a violent situation because of that.
It did work then.
Altogether, I'm afraid of us throwing the baby with the bathwater here, but it'd be a great one to look at the impact of this peace accord.
If you ask me, I think we have almost the same kind of situation that we have with the peace accord with the NYSC. We're always talking about, okay, so is it really still serving the purpose for which it started in the first place and all of that? I think it's the same thing here. Why talk about a peace accord because for you to broker peace between two parties, you must have both parties on the table. You must hear both sides. Yeah. You must be able to empathize with all the key players in the conversation and bring them to a place where they can all see a common ground. It is on that basis of a common ground that you can say you have a peace accord. If we don't have it, and we just arrive with documents and say, oh, okay, well, we did it in Kogi last year. We did it in so and so. So let's just do it. It's good for the politics. But these parties are not involved or they are not interested. Then what we do is we reduce the quality of confidence that the populace have in that process, that entire process going forward. So at the end of the day, I think that the apathy that we can now see in line with the peace accord is largely to the extent that it has been effective. And that's what I believe. So I think that the strategy should be looked at again. I think that maybe the parties the parties who are driving it should go back to the drawing board, go back to the laws of the land, go back, because all of these things have to work with the law of the land, and then come up with a way that this works. Because at the end of the day, they didn't sign, so it means...
Brilliant initiative to have the peace accord. Very brilliant. It's not to look at characters and the political parties. Half the time we're quick to talk about the umpire, INEC, we talk about the security are doing... the political parties are a major problem in this country. From how they handle their primaries to how they conduct the elections within, their parties, how they are constituted, what they represent and stand for.
Simple internal politics.
How they try to muddy the water so much to confusing people as who the villain is.
True.
we really need to look at political parties.
True. And talking about political parties, I know we're going to get to Labour Party. Before the last election, how much of the Labour Party's internal wranglings did you ever hear about? How much of
Labour Party was in the news?
How much of a Labour Party was there? You know,
aside from one time, was it Osun Ondo State governor who came out from that Labour Party?
Yes.
That was it.
That was it. And at that time, it seemed like, it was so harmonious. We know what we want. The people, it's about the people and all of that. But the moment they got they didn't even get the offices that they wanted. They just got some attention. And that was it.
Now we have to deal with so much issues in the Labour Party because it's in the news. I mean, Aisha Yusufu Abure Bika over management of Peter Obi's campaign fund. He said, she said, you're the one that handled the money. No, you were the one that handled the money. No, I did not handle the money. Yes, you handled. Who handled the money?
Money, please. At
how
the end
much
of the day.
was handled? How was it expended at the end of the day? Zero integrity coming from a good number of these parties. Labour Party is not spared from this. I mean, the fact that we're looking between both sides to saying who handled the money. That means zero accountability to the people who invested in that party. I remember on social media when there was a call to contribute, and people have sent my own widow's mite. I've sent my urgent 2K. I've sent this one. How much was raised?
Yeah.
How was it expended? Campaign financing, we've not interrogated it enough in this country. How political parties, I mean, people can sit down and analyze how Kamala is getting her funding, how Donald Trump is getting her funding.
Space. You can actually Google it and you find it right there. You know, so it's not difficult to actually do this. These kinds of bickerings are not necessary if you have facts. Aisha Yusufu was able to go ahead and put out a few figures and say, okay, 1 billion was to be shared to 13,000 delegates and this and that. And when we found out that the delegates that were sent to us, you know, were not actually the people they said they were, because we're verifying, we stopped paying. And we have the records to show all of this. The next question would be, can you show us the records, please? You know, so that we can just, because if you leave us to speculate, then we're going to come up with all kinds of theories. You know, so to Aisha Yusufu, I would say, put out the information. You have it. You like you said, you followed due process. You had enemies because you didn't want to distort the process and all of that. Put out the information. Abure says we didn't handle any funds and all of that, but there is an allegation that his faction created an account during that period, the 1,000 naira challenge and all of that. You remember all of that? So how much came into that account? The easiest thing to follow in the world is money. That's the easiest thing,
but not in Nigeria.
It's supposed to be the easiest thing, So where accounts were created, where bank statements can be obtained, where it should be a walk in the park. But we both know what we're talking about.
Sadly, and there's a lot of press conferences going on. Abure faces a tough choice: quit or risk public disgrace, and all of that going on. And at the end of the day, no accountability is going to come out of this enough to say how monies were spent and the internal issues they're dealing with the party, from who is the right head of the party to dragging in case they had slapped one at one point in time. You thought Abure was the man, and it just tells you,
the caretaker committee that has been set up and all of that. And this is not that they want. Imagine. I mean, I know that this is an outcome that most of us would have, or most people would have liked, that Peter Obi had won the elections. Imagine that Peter Obi
obviously, the party
elections.
will still give a lot of headache. Now we're seeing
the party would not have existed by today. I don't think it would still be existing by today if Peter Obi had won. Because right now, he didn't win. He didn't win. And we cannot agree on one national working committee. We cannot agree.
I mean, the party that has a faction.
Do you get what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, what are we really talking about? So I just think that we have the same kinds of people, just under different umbrellas.
Now, 3 years is not a long time to prep ahead for another election. You will say you need, from the minute you lose one election, you need to start preparing for the next one. Or even the minute you win one, we get to see they're preparing for the next election already.
Yeah.
Now, if the party, the past over 1 year, has been having internal wrangling to a point where different faction, different group putting out statements, back and forth with the court, already weakening. And we saw how PDP was weakened also when they were dealing with who their chairman was and who was a mole from the opposition there. Who do you even call a mole here? So you start to really wonder as to how it will even impact.
How it has impacted.
Yeah.
Because right now, first of all, most of the people who wanted the Labour Party to come into power and all of that to be their credible opposition, most of them are losing faith already to a great extent. So it's difficult for you to come back from this and convince everybody that it's all dandy and good right now. We can actually win an election after this. Then some of the names that were never mentioned in such quotas, some of the names that never had political leanings, affiliated with their names, are now in the middle of the conversations.
Let's go on a quick break.
More conversation, more talk, more right after this.
This is Nigeria Info.